Hello, everybody. We are now recording, so if you say anything in the Discord, just know that it's going to go up to YouTube and be there in perpetuity. Today, I'm going to be giving a small workshop on using TTS for rapid prototyping. My name is Cole Worley, and I'm a member of the Zenobia board, and happy to help with this little workshop. Um, TTS is a big subject. It's not as big as all graphic design, but I think we'll be able to take you through most of the kind of key elements of how TTS works and why it might be a useful tool when it comes to your own prototyping. Now, one thing I'll say kind of right at the start. I should say this workshop will be a little shorter than the other workshops. I'm hoping to kind of get through all the main points in 30 minutes or so, and then there'll be lots of time for questions. I can help you troubleshoot. Yeah, we'll get right to it. So I'll say TTS is one of a number, by TTS I mean Tabletop Simulator, is one of a number of digital tabletop tools. Others include Tabletop Playground, Screen Top, Zunsu, there's a bunch of them. Vassal. I don't have any strong preference here. I think I usually encourage folks to use the tools they're most comfortable with. TTS can be a very powerful tool. It's also a tool that is used by a lot of different people for different reasons, which means when you log into it, you might have trouble doing the specific thing that you want it to do. And you might be irritated by the fact that when you pick up a miniature, it starts walking for no reason. Well, it's because certain people want that feature. So TTS has a kind of kitchen sink philosophy when it comes to its features, a little bit like an Adobe Suite product. And that can make it a little difficult to navigate, but the core of TTS is actually very simple. So, but a lot of what I'm saying can be applied to other digital tabletop platforms. Now, TTS is a paid tool. I think it usually costs around $20. If you find it on a Steam sale, you can get it for a few bucks. And there are also a variety of secondhand Steam stores if you're looking for a copy. Tabletop Playground, which is a lot like Tabletop Simulator, costs about the same amount of money. And then Screen Top is a free alternative, and this is screentop.gg. ScreenTop is really good at some things and is less good at other things. One of the best things it's good at, though, is it is free and browser-based, which means anybody who has a browser can interact with it. But there are certain types of games that are easier and harder to deal with in ScreenTop. Oh, and then lastly, Tabletopia, which we may have a workshop about. I can't remember offhand. Tabletopia is another online platform for playing games, like ScreenTop, but it has some more features. Okay, so for folks who are going to be watching the video on demand, you're going to get a little video of me communicating, but unfortunately, Discord is very jealous and cannot have the video if it's also going to OBS, if I'm going directly from my camera. So what I'm going to do now is start streaming via Discord my screen. So let me go ahead and do that right now. There we are. So we're, like the other workshops, where you're going to go right into see all my messy files. Let's get right into it. So here's TTS. You open it up. There's a blood splatter. There's really loud like intro music. You can turn that music off here, by the way, so you don't have to torture yourself with it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a, here, I'll say something about this general screen. So when you're joining games on ScreenTop, you can see a public game list here. There's all kinds of games happening. As you can see, there's tons of stuff in this list. Many of them are going to be password protected, but it's very easy to host and find games. Again, all happening within this piece of software. Now, when I am working on my own screen, my own mods for Tabletop Simulator, I will build them in single player usually. So I just clicked on single player here. And then to start, let's talk a little bit about what ScreenTop is. So I'm actually going to start with this just standard default Othello table, or reversi, if you prefer. So I got my desk is messy. There we are. So what is this? Well, you've got a weird backdrop image. You've got a floating table. It's a little ornate. And then we have a board here and some pieces. This is a 3D object. You'll see that as I hover over it, there are certain points that show the shadow of the piece. These are called snap points. And if you want to edit where your snap points are, you can click this little green button in the bottom left, and it will show you all the snap points. So let's say I didn't want this section of the board to have snap points. I can just click on these to turn the snap points off. And now you'll see that this piece has been freed from the grid over here, whereas if I dropped it over here, it would snap to those points. Now, one thing I'll say about snap points is that I generally don't use them unless I've got a very good reason to, or until I get into the end of the project. Because if you change this board, you don't want to have to add steps to your iterative loop by having snap points that you need to clean up. Now, the other thing you can do about snap points is, let's say I've got this white tile, and I really want this specific piece not to snap, but I want everything else to snap. Well, if you right-click on this object, you'll see that there's a toggle menu. And the toggle menu has a ton of options on it, and one of those options is snap. And so I could just unclick snap, and now this object has been freed from the snapping grid, whereas this object, and even these objects, are still snapping. Now, you can also, there's a color tint that you can apply to objects. This basically tints everything. I think it's not with like a darken or multiply function, so that, for instance, on its black side, it's still going to be black with like a light reddish tint. Over here, though, we've got it on red. Color tint is a great way to like easily make player colors. Now, one little tip here, let's say I've got a bunch of white pieces over here, and I want them all to be the same color as this. If I highlight this group, and then I right-click on this green tile and click color tint, you'll see I have this exact green selected. If I hit apply, it will apply it to all the colors of that shape. So some basic object interactions. Now, when you've got a selection of objects, you can arrange them in grids by using the number buttons on your keyboard. If I've picked up these objects, I can press numbers. So this is 1, I've got them in 1 row. 2 puts them in 2 rows. 3 organizes them along 3 rows. This is very useful when kind of creating the setups for your mods and games. You'll see that they snapped all weirdly here. That's because they're interacting with the snap points. So if I put them here, they'll fall just fine. Now, there are 2 buttons up here at the top that we should talk about. So the first one is the lift height. So this is how high, when I drag this object up, how high is it off the table? And so you can see that we're dragging it really up about a piece. Now, this can create problems because the objects exist in 3-dimensional space, right? So they can, like, knock each other over by accident. So what you can do then is you could adjust your lift height like this, and now when I pick up pieces, I'm picking them up a lot higher. Usually I keep my lift height pretty low. All right, and then the last thing is we need another object for me to illustrate you with this one. So let's take a look at this rotation degrees. You can use Q and E to rotate things. Actually, I can show it. So if I click this line of objects, I'm holding it up, I can press Q and E to rotate these objects. Now, as I'm rotating them, every click is rotating them 45 degrees. So if I'm only needing to tap cards, let's say I'm playing Magic the Gathering, well, then I want every rotation to only do 90 degrees. Whereas if I'm playing a game that has a lot of subtle rotation, I can click it down to 15. All right, so that's going to let us, have all the attitudes we need to make a clock or something. Okay, so we'll go back to 45. Oops. So that's the lift height and the rotation. Now let's take a look at this top menu. This flip button is dumb. If you do it, it will ask you this, and then if you flip the table, it just destroys everything. I don't know why it's up here. It's some weird Polish joke, I imagine. For modding, you use this tab to upload things into the to the Steam Workshop, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and also it allows you to do scripting and things. Usually, you'll interact with the Workshop upload section. Now, the options menu these are a lot of options here, including, this is the very important one, info. Info is where you give the name of the game you're playing. So if other people see you on Steam playing Tabletop Simulator and they see you playing a game called Reverse Eye, well, that's because the word Reverse Eye is right here. Again, that's in options. And there's a bunch of funny little toys to play with here, which we'll talk about later. Notebook. is just a place for you to write rules. Generally, you don't need to engage with this. Music, I have never actually pressed this button. There's a music player, I guess. I don't know. I've used this program for 4 years. So I've never pressed that button before. Now I have. And then we have the objects menu. Now the objects menu is very important. This is how you're going to be adding new objects to the game. And we'll talk about how this works in further detail later. And then lastly, or second to last, we have the games menu. This is where you're going to download and load mods and things like that. And then over here, this is the rewind time feature. Be very careful with this. This is an undo that will take the game back one step. This very routinely breaks mods. And so don't hang with this. Don't hang with this that much. Yeah, so just, something to think about. Then all these things over here, these are various tools. We've got pen tools for drawing. We've got zones, which we'll talk about more soon. We can draw lines. This a flick command. You can use this to flick a piece like that. If you're making a dexterity game, that might be useful. Now you'll see I just flipped that piece off the board. When I do that, it is going to respawn at kind of like the edge of the play, floating above this table, so I can grab it to put it back in play. So anything that falls down is going to be restored to the table. So don't worry if you drop a piece off the table. It'll come back. There it is. Okay. The combine tool is used for attaching objects together. Probably not super useful to y'all, but there's functionality where I could, for instance, if I wanted one tall piece, I could use the combine function. Oh my gosh, I think I have to highlight both of them. Something like that. I can't remember precisely how it works, but there's a way that, so I've done it. I've combined these pieces. They're one piece now. Again, may have some utility to you. You see how it's like acting as a joined piece. Just know that you have the ability to combine pieces. Text, not super useful. It is a useful tool, but it basically just allows you to type a message here. Get 10 points. Usually, I will use this sometimes for taking notes, but more commonly in the bottom right, there's a notepad that you can use. And you can turn it on and off like that. And we'll just hold here. This is a nice place to put like reminders to all players. You can use this as like a little notepad or a player aid if you'd like. Then we've got a decal tool. The gizmo we won't worry about. The point tool we've already talked about, snap points, and then the decal tool right here is used for placing decals on things. So decals, let me see how easy this is. Okay, might be a little hard to teach. Basically, decals are like stamps. So if you ever used Kid Pix many years ago, or it's a sticker. You could have an image and you can apply it to different. If I wanted to put a little crown on top of all of these, I could use the decal tool to upload the crown. Okay, so now we've got this our reverse eye game. I'm actually going to create the simplest version of this reverse eye game that I can, which is a table, a board, and 2 pieces and a lot of snap points. And there's a little bit of text box here. Now, this is a TTS mod that we've built. Good job. It's got 2 pieces. And we're going to save it. Now, the save menu here is a total mess. And it's just because these are all like working projects that I've done. But we're just going to call this Zenobia test. We're going to save it. We're going to weirdly have to retitle it again. You have to save things with 2 names. Note that we're taking save slot 644. Believe it or not, that matters. And so here's 644. Here's the Zenobia test. Now, if I go into my saves folder, and so I'm going to show you guys this. Here's my saves folder for my TTS saves, and it's in, this is a PC file tree, but this PC, documents, my games, Tabletop Simulator, saves. This is where your mods live. And I could, let's see how easy this is to find. Here it is, TTS save 644. Now you'll notice this is a JSON file. And any of you who have done any web design probably know all, or any kind of data work, know all about JSONs. You can open these files in Notepad. And this is what a TTS file is, ultimately. It is a JSON, and every single object in the JSON is described and properly tagged in this file. Now, you never really have to worry about this file, but I like showing it to people when I'm teaching TTS because you should know that everything you're doing in TTS is essentially, building a text file, right? Here's the save name, it's Zenobia test, the game mode, the game type, all that stuff. Here are the rules that we saw blocked out. So if I make changes here and save it and I load it into TTS, those changes will be reflected. Some people, when they're making changes, if they want things to be perfectly lined up, they can edit this file directly. And they're pretty easy to learn how to navigate if you have worked with JSONs before. If you have not worked with JSONs before, don't worry about it. We won't need to go back into this. But I just want you to know that every TTS save is basically a JSON file, and then there's a PNG. Now, you probably can assume that this PNG is that little image right here. So if I open this, so you can see here, this little, when at the moment of saving, it takes a screenshot, and then it kind of gives that as the album art. Oh yeah, thank you, Artur. That's quite right. It's the second one that actually saves it. It is horrible UI. Yes, there's a, and I can't believe they haven't changed it. You're right, because this is a search bar. It's not the name. That's going to give you the name. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Okay, so let's go back here. Now, obviously, not most people are going to be wanting to make a game that is more complex than this. So how do we do that? Well, a TTS mod is going to be constructed of a lot of images. Now, a lot of images and a lot of objects. So if you go to the Objects tab, you can go to the Components, and you can see that they have a lot of different preloaded pieces. And I encourage people, when they're using TTS, to use the heck out of the preloaded pieces. You don't need to build your own die. Just use a D6. You can drop it right here. Here's a D4. Any dice that have that are built in, if you highlight them and pick them up and and press R. Sorry, if you just highlight them and press R, it will roll the dice, and then you can see the totals on there. If you have them highlighted and hover over, it will even sum up all of the totals, which is nice. So there's some dice for us. And then we've got, coins that can be flipped. There are poker chips. Tools, a very useful tool, bags, which can be used to store objects. We'll talk more about that later. And then infinite bags, which when you put one object in an infinite bag, it will clone it infinitely. So now this is the D4 bag. All right. Calculator useful, and then especially useful because victory point tracks are hard to do layout. If you ever have to add things up, just use a counter instead. And these counters, by the way, can take different color tints. So if you want it to be a red counter, that's fine. I don't know how light these can go though. Not bad. And then you can just use these pluses and minuses. This is great for like tracking player money. And then you can use the clear to clear, of course. And there are calculators. The tablet can be used as a browser that exists within TTS. Sometimes players use this to access the rules for their game. So they will access the rules on a tablet. You can also import PDFs and have a page viewer built within everything. Okay, good. There's that. All right. So the most useful objects, though, that you'll need are custom objects. So obviously, we can only go so far if we're making a war game by putting a bunch of pawns on the board. All right. So like this is not going to take us to where we want to be. So let's take a look at this box. These are the custom components. Now the custom components come in these varieties: boards, tiles, tokens, cards, decks, things like that, and dice. Now when I load a tile in, we'll use a tile as an example. I press it, and then if I select out of that, it's going to ask me, hey, you want to make a custom tile. What do you want that to be? Now there's a lot of ways to do this. what you're going to want to do for these tiles or for any custom piece is you're going to need to find a place where the real JPEG exists. And I'm going to, so we're going to go out of TTS. I'm going to talk about this process in detail. Now, here's something that I wish I had like a big flashing warning I could display on the screen. And this is the most important thing about TTS, unfortunately. TTS can only use RGB files. If you try to load a CMYK JPEG or PNG or whatever, TTS will crash. And it will crash without an error message. It'll just say something's wrong, and then it'll crash. So if ever you upload something and TTS immediately crashes, you have uploaded something in CMYK, and I'm referring here to the color space of the file. So I just want to like quadruple underline it. I'll say it a few different times. Okay, so here we have a custom tile though, and we're going to upload it, and we have to upload images. Now you'll see a little like local folder here. This is a trick. Don't do this. You need to find a URL for your image file. Now this is actually a little difficult to do. We need to find stable URLs. And here I would highly recommend using a cloud-based storage solution to host your files. So for those of you who were at my chat on graphic design, I spent a long time talking about file structure and places where you can be running exports, and how sometimes we're exporting things for a physical print and play kit, and sometimes we're exporting things for a digital print and play kit. And when you're exporting things for a digital print and play kit, you're usually exporting them to some kind of platform that is available remotely, like a cloud platform. And that platform should be able to provide you with what's called a stable URL, which is the true path, the true file name. So now let's go into some examples. So for today, because I have a little bit of work to do, we're gonna work on Mollyhouse together, and I'll show you guys how Mollyhouse is set up. So Mollyhouse is a very messy file tree because it's in production. The production files are actually very clean and nice, but the working files here are messy because of course they're messy. Now I have a folder inside my Mollyhouse files called TTS. And what TTS is, something's wrong with my Dropbox. So we're going to learn about it together, because if my Dropbox isn't working, we're going to have trouble with this. All right. Interesting. Hold please. This is a funny thing that's happening. Okay, well, 1 second. What I'm going to do is... okay. So we're going to do a very quick Dropbox reset just to make sure everything is acting as it should. I wondered why that was happening earlier. Okay, so I almost never have problems with Dropbox. This is a very new thing for me. We're going to see if Dropbox acts better after a reset. So Dropbox, you can get a free Dropbox account. I think they allow like 1 to 2 gigabytes of files, and you get a lot of the useful features that you need for this. If you're using Dropbox, I highly recommend having the desktop version of Dropbox, which means there'll be a folder on your computer. So for example, like we'll peek over here at the Leader Games files. So we have a folder called the Leader Games Dropbox folder, and then here we have all these various subfolders. And they'll get a little green check mark to just show that they are properly and truly uploaded. It's fascinating. There's some weird syncing error here. If I can't get this to work, then I will be able to use my personal Dropbox without too much trouble. Oh, I think we're gonna get lucky, maybe. No? All right, let me try one more thing. Okay, I think I got it working. Excellent. So here we are in Dropbox, or not in Dropbox, we're just in the folder that is within a Dropbox file. And you can see here that all of these files that are part of the Mollyhouse kit, they all have a little green check mark on them. And what that means is just that it is successfully uploaded. Now, let's upload an object. So we have a tile here. Tiles come in one of these shapes. They can be squares, hexes, circles, or rounded. And this isn't just a square, it can be a rectangle too. And tiles can have a top image and a back image, a front and a back image. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these reputation tokens and we're going to upload them for fun. Actually, you know what? We're actually going to do this properly. So I have to get these encounter tokens. I've got this encounter token right here that I've made. Let's take a look at it. It's just a square that says the word encounter on it. So pretty exciting JPEG. And what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this file and you're going to see that there is a button. This is if you have the Dropbox app, you'll see a copy Dropbox link. Now this is going to give us a link that's going to look like this. It's got just a bunch of here. You know what? I'll show you a notepad so we can do it. So a Dropbox link looks like this. Wow, just a big old mess. And I'll zoom in here. Whoops, that's not how you zoom in. Okay. So here's our Dropbox link. Just a bunch of gobbledygook. Now, this is not a stable URL because if we were to put this in a browser, you would see that it would take us to this like very Dropboxy website with all these funny buttons and things like that. And we don't want that. We just want this image. I wonder if there's an easier way to do that. No, this is even worse, that preview button. So what we can do, there's a trick, which is we can edit this URL, and I will write this in the chat as well, but you go like this. You change the www.dropbox.com to dl.dropboxusercontent.com, and I will put this in chat because it is so valuable. Change to DL. So when we do this, if we were to take this URL and put it in our web browser, so again, this is what the regular URL takes us to. If we do this, it's going to just take us to the image. Right? This is a stable URL. Lovely. Now, if we go into TTS, if I were to copy our new stable URL, see the dl.dropboxusercontent, I'll put it on the front and the back, and I import it, and you know what? We'll round the corners because we like it, right? The thickness, how thick do we want the tile, things like that. Let's take a look. Hey, here he is. This is a thing that we made that is now sitting inside the game. Now, it can be irritating, I will say, to have to change all the URLs individually. So what I like to do, actually, is I like to use a notepad. And so I say, this is the back. These are the fronts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to here. And so I know that I've got this token right here, this encounter token. And then I have these 5 unique backs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to copy these Dropbox links. And put them in here. And you can see, see how this is Encounter Informer, like the file name is in there. So you can make sure that you are getting the correct file name. Now, as soon as a file, I'll say while I do this, as soon as a file appears on Dropbox, it gets assigned this identification tag. And when it comes to, this is one reason why you might want to run your exports outside of Dropbox and then move them into Dropbox, because the moment they enter the folder, they get assigned that ID. And sometimes copying over them might not work quite as well, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about that soon. Okay, cool. So I've got all these here, and then what I'll do is I'll just do a replace and say, look, I already have it preloaded here. Dropbox.com is being replaced by dl.dropboxusercontent.com. Replace all. Done. Okay, there we are. And now I have all these lovely file paths. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make my encounter tiles. So I need, I've got this one, and I need to give it its proper back. So what I'm going to do is go custom. I'm going to pull the first link. I'll do this all on screen here. Pull the first link, and I'll say the bottom image, I want it to be this. Now you'll see there's a stackable button. This is like if you want to make cards and things like that. I don't want these to be stackable. Now if it worked, the back will have that. Excellent. Now I'm going to make another one. And I just copy and paste. So now we've got two informers. Okay. And I'm going to go custom, and I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to copy that second back. Now as soon as I do this, TTS notices that this file was the same as this file. This object was the same as this object. And so TTS says, hey, do you want me to just make these all the same? And in this case, I do not want them to be the same, because I want this to be the informer and this to be one of the loyalty tiles. Okay, we're going to quickly do these. Now, you might be wondering, like, oh my goodness, do I have to do these with every single card in the game? And the answer is no, because we have a useful tool for doing cards, which we will be talking about next. So worry not about doing cards. I just have to do these anyway, so I thought, why not do them together? All right, and then this. Okay, and good. Okay, so here are all, oh, there's one I'm missing. I think. One second. Yep. I'm missing the encounter one. It's right there. Okay, cool. So now we've built these objects. Great. We can fan them out. We have all those usual tools. In TTS, you can always size everything. So I can size things like that. That's fine. With just the plus or minus. The plus or minus keys will size everything. If I want them to be thicker, I could highlight them and change their thickness here. Oh, it's only going to change the primary highlight. So I could go through and, I want them all to be 0.2 or something. In this instance, I actually want to keep them thin. But just know that the thickness control is right there. All right, and this is how you make double-sided tiles and objects. Now, tiles and objects don't by default stack. You can have them stack. You can't. They're kind of hard to shuffle. If you do want to shuffle tiles, you can do it. You do it by using a bag. So in TTS, you can use a bag like this. I can put all these tiles in here. And if I were to pull out a tile, it would come out in the same order I put it in. But if I mouse over this bag and press the R key, I shuffle the bag, and now it will pull out random tiles. So you can still use tiles like cards. All right, now that is how tiles work. And remember, you can do tiles of various shapes. Let's go back to our objects menu, components, and custom. So we've talked about tiles. Tokens are a little different from a tile. They're a little thicker, and they have some different properties, but the main one is their fronts and backs are mirrors of each other. So if I were making like a checker or something, I would use a token instead of a tile. Figurines have little standees. Whatever image you upload is going to be standing on the image. That's fine. Tokens, one advantage of tokens is they can take different shapes. So here, actually, let me show you guys a token. So here, I'm going to show you, let's see if I can find it easily. So I have this little fireball. This is from the game Fire and Stone. And this is a PNG. And a PNG is a type of image file that can handle a transparency. So you'll see that like this edge beyond here is transparent. You can kind of see it there. Now, if I were to, let's copy that Dropbox link. And if I were to use a tile with this PNG, so we're going to put our little PNG in here. And remember, we got to go dl.dropbox.usercontent. If I were to use this image and upload it, it's going to get stretched and they're going to put a big black line on it. Because what TTS is trying to do is fill the shape that I have selected, right? So that kind of works. But what if I want it to just like look like its shape? Well, I can still do that, but I have to use the token tool. A token tool is great when you've got a transparency. You can put that here, import it, and you'll see that now this lovely piece right here has a transparency around it. If you flip it over, it gives you the reverse as well. Now, tokens cannot be made double-sided with two different sides. If you want to do that, it's a little bit more complicated. And what you'll want to do is use the decal tool to make a stamp that you will like apply to the piece. I'm not going to go into that right now. Just know that you have to use decals to do it. How do you know the size of a JPEG to use? Excellent, excellent question, Stephanie. So TTS will comfortably handle anything below about 4,000 square. That's 4,000 pixels on each side. However, whenever people load a mod, they have to download all these JPEGs. So what I usually encourage people is to export their PNGs at 100 to 200 DPI, that's dots per inch, as a kind of like basic resolution. So it doesn't, 300 is a common print resolution. You don't need to be that high. If there's a lot of text, you might want to export something in a 200 point or 250 point resolution. If you don't have a lot of text, you can go lower. And I will talk about exporting soon. That's a great question. Okay, and actually, and TTS will handle files larger than 4,000 square, but it will cause different things. Thank you, Artur. It'll cause some hardware issues. Okay, so those are all those things. Now, I actually usually recommend people don't use the board function because boards in TTS have this like weird frame. And so you could actually just like use a tile instead of a board. You know, some people like to use the boards, whatever. Okay, let's talk about a deck. So the way decks work in TTS is you have to make a sprite sheet. And again, I will show you the Molly House sprite sheet, just so we all know what we're talking about. So here's a sprite sheet for Molly House. And you'll see that all the files here are laid out in rows, just like this. And this is one big JPEG. And when we load the JPEG into TTS, we will tell it how many columns and how many rows. And then TTS will go through the process of cutting up the file and loading it in as a deck. So let's, you know what we should do actually? Let me pivot just quickly and take a look at the workshop files that we were using. That's not what we want. Got to remember where I put this stuff. Okay, so for those who remember from the graphic design tutorial, we made a digital kit maker for a test game. And you might remember Sally and Todd and Auden and Nell and Owen and all these cards that are right here. So these were cards that we made during the graphic design workshop, and you'll see that I've arranged them in Adobe InDesign in a sprite sheet that is 4 columns wide and 3 columns tall. Now what we're going to do is we're going to export this. And so I'm going to export it here, and we're going to put it in our exports, and I have a TTS kit folder. Oh, we've already exported it, but I'll do it again. So I'm just going to call this cards, right? I'm going to call it main card deck. You can call it whatever you want. And you'll see that I'm saving it as type JPEG. Now when I go to save, you'll see that the export menu has a number of different options on it. Now because these cards have text on them, I probably want to save them closer to 200 DPI, maybe 225. And the color space, absolutely always, big warning signs, needs to be RGB. Cool, so I'm going to do this. Quality medium, that's fine, and I'm going to export it. Now, if I go to my exports folder and the TTS kit, we'll see that we have the main card deck here, and it's got the green check mark, which means that It is already uploaded to Dropbox. Now, I am working within my Dropbox folders. That's where pretty much all of my work goes. So anything that I finish for work goes up to Dropbox immediately. This is a real useful way to not lose work, because if I had something happen, the work is going to be preserved as long as it made it into the upload. Now let's right click on this deck, and we're going to do the same exercise of copying the Dropbox link. And now let's go to TTS. So I want to import a deck. Here's our deck. All right, here's the deck. And what I'd like to do, so you click it once, and then I'm going to just kind of move my cursor to a different tool so that I'm prompted with the custom deck import menu. So here it is. Now, the face cards, I'm going to paste that URL. Remember that we have to change the URL to say DL Dropbox user content.com. Now, there's some interesting options. The first option is I can choose if I want unique backs. This is important. If I do not say unique backs, whatever back image I put here will be duplicated over the entire deck. So let's actually grab a card back image. And I'm just going to grab one from another game I've worked on. Will it be Molly House? Why not? This is Zenobia Workshop. We should use Zenobia assets. Here's a card back that we're using as a placeholder. We can use that. So here we go. There's a card back. I'm going to go ahead and copy this image. Dropbox link. Get this in here. Same little exercise. You will quickly memorize this. Okay. Now, the width and height are how wide and high the deck is. And you'll remember from over here that we have a 4 wide, 3 tall. So I go width 4, height 3. Now, how many cards do we have? Well, let's make a mistake on purpose. So right now, we have 8, 9 cards. Let's say we selected 10. So we're going to say we want 10. There we go. Back is hidden. This just uses the back image of the card to show that it's hidden. All right, so let's go ahead and import this. Ah, look at this. We have our little deck. So if I pull cards from this deck, whoops, you'll see that there's Sally and here's Todd. Right, so we've got our little cards in this deck. Now, we can use the R key to shuffle it. That's totally fine. And cards are very useful in TTS. If I go here to my zones button, you'll see that we have these things called hand zones. Every hand zone is associated with a player. So I could delete a player's hand, for instance, by pressing the delete key. So let's delete some hands here. And then I could say, oh yeah, like the pink player, I want to have a hand right here. You just drag the box, and then you click on it, and you say, that's the pink player. They're going to have a hand right there. I can then give this card to the pink player, and it will go in their hand. And I note that even if this card says Todd, as soon as it's in this other player's hand, it's going to turn down to the other side. There's Todd. Okay, that's how you do it. Now, let's say I wanted to have card backs. Well, I could. Let's see if we can do this very easily. So we have this file right here. What I'm going to do is something kind of odd. I'm going to imagine a world where I wanted to make custom backs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, so we can differentiate these easily. I'm just going to put like a color wash over everything. I don't know, 50, and then, oops. So what I've just done here is I put a pink wash over all these cards. Yeah. Let's, make it look a little bit better than that. Okay, so if I export this, instead of the main card deck, I'm going to call this main card deck back. Same deal. Now when I go into my folders, you'll see that we have a main card deck back file. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. This is a funny thing that's just happened. Let me delete these. So I need to, when I export it, I'm going to call this the main, oh, ooh, I made a mistake. It's all right. TTS is going to be unhappy with me for a second. I just deleted the wrong file. So there's the main card deck. And then the mistake I made, I deleted the wrong file. So there's the main card deck, and then we do main card deck back. Critically, yes, I want to replace it. Critically, I need to go range page 2. That was what I did wrong. Okay, so now we've got our files here. I have to re-upload this one because this is a new file in Dropbox. I'm not going to worry about that too much. It happens all the time. So if I go here, you'll see that this file is actually broken right now. This link is. So if I put this in this bag, when I pull it out, TTS gets very unhappy with me because the file has disappeared. Apologies, by the way, if you're hearing a siren. It's Severe Weather Awareness Week here in Minnesota. So they're testing all tornado sirens. Okay. So let's put these in here. And then let's go over here. And here's our back. We're going to take this back. We're going to go copy Dropbox link. We're going to put it in here. Remember, this is just for the card backs. Now, critically, we are going to click the unique backs button. And when we do this, what did I do? Oh. So now we have the card backs here, and if I flip it, we have the Sally front here. So just the thing to note here is that these, unlike an actual sheet of paper where you have to print things backwards on the backs, Sally card 1 is corresponding to Sally card 1 on the other sheet. Okay, there are cards. Now, remember how I said that we only had 9 cards, but there's 10 in this deck? Well, all that means is that, you know, what's happening here is TTS is looking through our cards. They're cutting up that JPEG. Yep, it's good. There's 8, there's 9. And then it gets to the 10th card, and it just cuts a white card. So, like, the TTS software is not smart enough to read this text and know that, you know, one JPEG is that different from another. So just know that if you add extra cards, if you get that number wrong, it's just going to create blank cards. Whew, okay, boom. That's how you upload a deck. Important. It's important stuff. Lastly, the last item that I want to talk about in detail is caching. So TTS does not want you by default to download a lot of files. So usually when you download files, TTS saves them into a temporary storage on your computer and doesn't re-download them. However, as game devs, we are going to be changing files a lot. So I highly recommend you go into your options. Go to menu, go to your settings, configuration, and if you go to game, you will see a button called mod caching. You turn this off. What this means is that whenever you load a TTS mod, you will re-download all the assets. Now, this is very frustrating and very wasteful if we are playing the same game over and over and over again and nothing's changing. But if you are changing your files, you do want to turn this off, and I will show you why. So these 5 tiles that I made, I need to take them to the Molly House kit. So we're going to go over to the Molly House kit now. You'll see that it's loading all the assets right now. Okay, so here's the Molly House kit. And what we're going to do is I'm going to paste these in. Excellent. And then these are a little too large, I think. So we're going to make them a little smaller. They need to be about this big. Good. Now in TTS, if you hold down the button Alt and then hover over something, it will let you zoom in on some these objects. These files might be too small generally. I'm not sure. We'll figure that out. But every player in Molly House needs a set of these bad boys. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we've just done that. Excellent. Now, let's say I want to make this change and then share it with a wider audience. So one thing I could do if I'm working locally is I could just go to my Games tab, and then I could create a file, save and load, and I'm going to save this as I'm going to call it mid-April Molly House. This allows me to have something that I can save and load. Mine's going to be somewhere down here. There it is, mid-April Molly House. The other way you can do this is by uploading it to your Steam Workshop. So you'll see this tag right here. This is a workshop mod. And once you enter more public playtesting, workshop mods are one of the best things that you can do to update your mod. So if you don't have a workshop mod and you want to stay like totally private, for instance, what you can do is save the JSON. You can give someone the JSON. If they move it into their save folder, they can start a game. Or if they join your game, their mod will update with what you have. The other way to do this is to use a workshop mod. So I can go here to my mods. Here's my workshop upload. And if you're uploading a mod for the first time, you do everything right here. And if you're updating it, you select the workshop ID. So I'll select Molly House here. And then I will click Update. And this will begin an upload to the workshop mod. Now, workshop mods, there's a ton of tutorials about this stuff, so I'm not going to worry about it too much for you all. But I recommend using a workshop mod for your projects. Let me go to my workshop here. So you see Molly House right here. Here's the mod. If you look right here, it says, hey, it was last updated on April 11th. And 153. You don't want to upload these too much, but anybody who has this link can access this particular mod. Now, you can edit the public nature of the mod over here. So you could change it so that the visibility. So like I have this as unlisted, which means you need the link. You can put it hidden, you can make it friends only, or you can have it public. We will be, of course, putting this public later on, just so folks are aware. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about caching. So when you are working on these games, you are going to have a lot of assets that you're going to have to change over and over and over again. And it's frustrating. So here, Dropbox is your best friend. What you can do, so I'm going to go back to Molly House here. That's not where I want to be. Boom. Nope. Okay. So in the Molly House folder, you'll see that I have these player boards, right? This is the old player board, and they're just called Player 1, Player 2, Player 3, etc. Now, if I go to InDesign, sure, and I open up my player boards, you'll see that I've been designing a better version of the player board. So what I can do, and this is just so you can see the file in its full glory, you'll see I'm working on one parent page right here. And then I have 5 player boards. Now, why do I have 5 player boards and not just a copy of one? It's because I might want to like change the color of these to reflect the player color later. Not sure yet. So I'm working from a parent page. Now, what I can do is I can go export. And I'll go export TTS. And I would like to replace my file that is player, because that's the player board file. Now, a multi-page document will start numbering at the second page. Player 2, Player 3, Player 4, Player 5. Okay. It's very important. So if I do this, and I say, and why yes, I would like, and we'll actually make these 270 or 250. I would like these to do all the pages. What's going to happen is you're going to see these get copied over. And we'll do it in real time. So we're going to export. And then you see, oh, it's uploading. And there's the new one. In a second. What happened? Oh, I have to tell InDesign that it's okay. There we go. Yes, of course, my dear, you may copy over all my files. And now, slowly, these are going to be replaced with the new player board. Beautiful. We love it. Now, if I go back to Tabletop Simulator, One little trick you can use is if ever you move something into a bag. So let's grab a bag. Components, tools, bag. If ever you drop something into a bag, when you pull it out of the bag, it will reload. So I can go like this. And you'll see that the new player board is now instantly in TTS. Now these are not in are the old player board, and the reason why they're the old player board is because TTS is still relying on my cache, which is to say the temporary files that have been previously downloaded. So if I just load another game, here's Chinese checkers, we'll throw in marbles, that's great. And then if I go and load Molly House again, you will see that it's going to load the new player boards for all players. So by changing one file, by copying over one file, it will instantly update everything. Now, here's where you have to be very careful. Dropbox does not actually care about a file that has the same name. So for instance, let's say you delete a file and then save a new file with the same name. It will have a different Dropbox ID, and so it will not load in. You have to explicitly copy over the file. Now, one way you can do this, and remember I said that every file gets its Dropbox ID as soon as it enters the Dropbox ecosystem. One way that you can get around this is if you export your files in a non-Dropbox folder, and then you give them the same names as the files in your Dropbox folder. When you copy them in, they will copy over those files and take the same Dropbox ID. I know that is a little complex, but hopefully as you get into this stuff, it will start making sense. Okay, and that brings me to the end of our discussion. So everything you see on the board here was basically made using the techniques that we just talked about. The one exception is dice. I didn't talk about custom dice. Know that when you're working on custom dice, that's not where I want to go. When you're working on custom dice, you have to use a template, which looks a little bit like this. Oh, that's a horrible image. Let me try a better one. There we go. So if you just search dice in TTS, you can access this template, and you just kind of put in the back, and then it'll tell you like, this is face number 1, this is face number 2. If you put your image on if you export a square image that has these proportions, when you create the custom dice, it will ask for an image. It's asking for this image, and it will wrap around the dice. So you'll see these dice here are pulling from that image. Yeah, but everything here, this mod that we have been testing for the past 2 years was built basically using all the techniques that I discussed for you all today. So I hope that was helpful. I'm happy to stick around for the next 10 minutes or so and give you tips on things. And if you have any other specific TTS questions, feel free to hit me up. We'll pay attention to chat here. You can also turn on your microphone and ask. How do you make the whole game surface flat? Great question. This, I believe, is a card, or this is a custom tile. Oh, how do you mean this game surface? Aha. Okay, so for boards, I like to use tiles or cards, just because they're very flat. For the playing surfaces, I recommend you steal them from, not steal, but use, okay, let me say a quick thing. You can copy and paste objects from anywhere. So if you like what you see in the Molly House mod, you're like, ooh, I want these exact dice. You can just copy them, just Control-C copy them, and that will take those dice. For tables, it's a little bit more complicated. There is a Steam Workshop file, which you can access by subscribing. So all Steam Workshop files you have to subscribe to in order to access them. So when I go to my games menu, this workshop stuff, these are all things that I have subscribed to. Let me see if I can get the precise URL. So Steam Workshop. Here we go. So this is what you need. You'll want to subscribe to this file. This is the flex table. Now, I see your question, Stephanie. So you want to make the entire environment 2D. Um, you can't quite do that. So there are different tables that don't have any legs and that have vanishing points. So it's just like an infinite table. And you are by all means welcome to use those. I don't have one that I prefer. But like if you were to open up a mod that doesn't have a table but just has a flat surface, um, you can always just like open up that mod, delete everything in it, only the table will remain. You can build your own stuff on it, and then you can just save it. So it's very easy to copy and move things around. Also, Julian has a really excellent point, which I'm very happy to see, which is if you don't want to copy and paste stuff, you can use the objects menu to save objects. And I think you right click. Yeah, you right click save object. If you want to save groups of objects, you can use bags. So if you put a bunch of objects in a bag, you can right click on the bag and save the bag. The bag will contain all the objects that were originally put in it. Okay, any other questions? These are very useful. One thing I'll say about TTS broadly is, and actually this is the reason why for TTS also has a lot of opportunities to use custom scripting. TTS uses Lua, Tabletop Playground uses JavaScript. For people who are familiar with coding, there's a lot of interesting and useful features that you can put in. I don't really mess around with all that stuff too much. The reason why I like TTS is because I find that I prefer using 3D platforms to flat platforms. I don't mind Vassal, but I'm not super into screen top, and it's because I want to be able to see the physical space and that little bit of dimension. I think it really helps me, and this is just like a personal aesthetic sensibility thing. And then I tend to use Tabletop Simulator more than Tabletop Playground because I just find it's a little faster. I think Tabletop Playground will eventually be a better program, but TTS for now is a little bit easier to use, and I am going to, in general, with my tools, pick the tool that is easiest, that is going to create the least friction, and as long as it, of course, can handle whatever aesthetic things I might need it to handle. Okay, any other questions? All right. Well, I see one more question coming in. As I said during the other workshops, I am happy if questions come up in contestant chat or in this voice chat. I will do my best to answer them. I'll also say that there are a lot of people who are learning this software for their own purposes outside of Zenobia. So just doing some Google searches can take you really far. And the TTS community. The game designers who use TTS, and you can various game design discords or even fellow contestants, tend to be pretty open and pretty sharing. I've never had trouble finding resources or anything like that. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for attending. Looks like this went a little closer to an hour. Let me look back at our schedule, and I will keep an eye on the voice chat as I'm doing this. The next workshop will be in a couple weeks. This is Damon Stone on designing card and card-driven games. Damon is a brilliant designer, and so it's definitely worth looking at. After that, Akar is giving a talk on game design as a user experience problem. Super useful. Remember that all the games that you're building have to be playable, and doing a little bit of usability study, a little bit of UX and UI work can go a long way. And then Jeff Eggleston, for our last talk on May 8th, will be doing a talk on solo design, which I will probably attend because I am so bad at designing solo games and I'm trying to learn to do it better. So again, thank you very much. If you missed the stream or if you missed the beginning of the stream, know that I will have it uploaded to the Zenobia YouTube channel within the next couple days. I appreciate all of your time, and I cannot wait to see your projects. As always, feel free to drop me a message and tag me in contestant chat or in this voice chat, and I will try to answer any questions you might have. And good luck building your digital kits, everyone.